Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the inn. We are here for our it's kind of tradition now. Blizzard announced nerfs. We talk about nerfs, and yeah, these are actually some fine nerfs. So, the ones everybody's been expecting. Let's get right down to it. First up, we have Naga Sea Witch. Naga Sea Witch, its cost has been increased from 5 to 8. This is actually I think a very fair change. Um, I get where they're coming from. A lot of people are going, well, why not just revert Naga Sea Witch? And the thing is that I think they're missing out that the whole reason that Blizzard had changed Naga Sea Witch in the first place was they were just trying to make Hearthstone just more consistent across the board, so that it was just easier to understand what a card did and how it interacted with other cards by looking at it. And Naga Sea Witch, prior to its change, did not interact like other cards in Hearthstone, so they changed it. And I think it just surprised them that by changing it, it just made certain combos incredibly broken. So they didn't want to reverse that change because that would make it hard to understand what certain cards did. So it's just easier to increase the change on Naga Sea Witch, which, given the change, that makes a lot of sense. Naga Sea Witch is no longer a 5 cost card. It really needs to be a higher cost card um, with the effect. An 8 cost, I think, is just about right. Team 5 is correct that by about turn 8 or 9, that's about when players can. That's about when most players will be able to have the tools to deal with large boards, especially large boards of 8/8s. I mean, it's still going to be very scary, but it's not going to be as oppressive. And I think Blizzard also said something really interesting, which was that, you know, they didn't want to just eliminate the deck existing. They actually thought that it was an interesting idea. It's just that Naga Sea Witch no longer should have been at 5. It needed to be, so they increased the cost at 8. And yeah, I actually think this is fine. This will allow a lot of other rooms in WoW a bit of breathing room, and that will also probably make Naga Sea Witch players question it about whether they want to play it because they like the deck or whether they're just trying to do something broken. It's still going to get played, mind you, but it should be a lot easier to deal with. And I'm actually all for this change. I think it's a good change.
I mean, like, if anything, when you take a look at Naga Sea Witch when it was at 5, it's one of those things where it's like, all right, I'm jumping this at 5, and then giant, and deal with it. That's basically what you had. So it was like, okay, I have to find a way to deal with this board somehow with the mana that I'm given, or I'm dead. It's one of those things where it's just like, I know you said that, you know, like they tweaked it and nerfed it, or tweaked it and shifted it to where it was 5, made it more consistent across the board, and then next thing you know, whack in the back of the head, there's this huge combo that's running around out there, and it ran around for months.
And I'll be honest, I really don't think that they were expecting this to happen. They were just doing some, essentially, I think you could say they were doing some quality of life changes, and then like, well, that's unexpected.
Yeah, it's just like I said, it's just one of those things where it's just like you kind of have that moment where just Homer's washing himself in the daggone tub, and the next thing you know, bam! This card hits them in the back of the head as Bart, and just you're like, oh. So, like, I'm glad, if anything, that it is being up to 8, because if anything, like, the only thing that relatively took care of the Giants Warlock as far as Wild went, or at least being able to get rid of all those Giants when they hit the board at once, was either Consecration and Equality, or you had to have Light Bomb ready to go as Priest. So, really great change overall. Spiteful Summoner is next. It went from 6 to 7. And, hey boy howdy, if anything, I look at this and I go, I know people wanted it to consume the spell, but making it on 7 is a lot more fair, and if anything, if you start to dilute that 10 pool a little bit, you get this Spiteful Summoner that goes from, hey, look at me, I'm going to draw an 8/8, almost guaranteed, to, well, now I'm drawing out something that isn't as good. So, if anything, it also makes it to where if you're playing something like Spiteful Druid, they may consider running 6-drop spells. I say may as a thing to kind of fill that slot, because it's now not an auto. Oh, look, Summoner play. So it slows down the deck a little bit. And if anything, it also plays into the turn of the Lich King. So, Spiteful on 7, Lich King on 8. If you haven't already drawn your double or single copies for that matter of Ultimate Infestation, so now you get to kind of tinker and toy around with that 10 cost mana spell to where it's like, do I want to put 2 of this in there, or do I just want to put 1 of this in there to kind of reduce or increase the chances of not drawing it? So, Bulb, I'm kicking this in your direction so I don't sit here and circle the drain on it.
Yeah, I was never sure how I actually felt about Spiteful Summoner consuming the spell. I think if I would have done that, I would definitely have taken it out of Randomonium, because I didn't want it to do that. And to be fair, I wasn't using Spiteful Summoner in a deck that was absolutely broken, because I had a lot of ways it could backfire on me. Because I wasn't going, I needed to only put in big spells because of Spiteful Summoner. I'm going, well, this could be entertaining. I'll put 1 copy in. I'll have to reevaluate how I feel about Spiteful Summoner now, whether it's too high a cost at 7, or whether I'll just let it stay in Randomonium. It's going to be a card I kind of will reevaluate as the time comes. In general, I think this is a fair change. I think basically what you do is you increase its cost by 1, make it a little bit more difficult to pull off in earlier stages of the game, and also you need to evaluate your 10 drops for the rest of this year, and put in some 10 drops that would be good in the decks that they're in, but would be bad to really pull from Spiteful Summoner. So basically, it'd be a combination of you increase the cost now, and you essentially increase the size of the 10 drop pool to make Spiteful Summoner worse later. I think that's the direction you should go. I'm not sure if they have been developing those other sets with Spiteful in mind. Hopefully they were, but if not, that's something that maybe when they're in the final design process, that might be something they go, okay guys, let's step back. Are there any minions that we can potentially increase the cost to 10 to dilute Spiteful Summoner? Or maybe they might insert something in there at the last minute. I don't know. That's something to keep in mind, that they might keep in mind going forward for the rest of the year.
Hopefully. Yeah. Plus, we didn't need a 7-cost Grand Archivist either, so...
Yeah. In general, I would say, well, Druid could find ways to ramp up, because Druid's doesn't necessarily have a problem with getting Spiteful Summon out earlier, but the helpful ramp spells are going to be a lot harder if you're running a Spiteful deck, because you're trying to keep the spell slots clear, so... Yeah, this is still pretty impactful, and I think this is pretty fair. It impacts the card without majorly impacting the card, and I think this, in conjunction with some final design tweaks for the last two expansions of the year, will go a long way to basically making Spiteful Summoner feel fair. Next up, we have Dark Pact. It originally restored 8 health to your hero when you destroyed a friendly minion. Now it restores 4 health to your hero. So they halved the amount of healing that this spell does. Now, it should be said that I'm going to read exactly what they said. They said, we left Dark Pact's cost intact so it can still be used as part of interesting combos. And I want to say, I'm going to call bullcrap on that from Blizzard, because I think what Team 5 was trying to be very nice, or was trying to beat around the bush, but like, we didn't want to impact the cost because that way it can still be used as combos, which I will call bullcrap on. Because even if you increase the cost to 2, it could still be used in interesting combos. The combos just end up coming out a turn later. It doesn't lessen the effect of combos. What they're really saying here is we considered increasing the cost, but then we thought about the overall meta state and realized that it decreased counterplay, because right now, Dark Pact can be countered by Skulking Geist. Granted, it's not a counter that's going to be that's widely ran or going to be widely run, because Skulking Geist, as we've kind of learned, is not the end-all be-all tech card people thought it would be way back in the day. But the fact that that counterplay to this card does exist is huge. So it's not so much about Dark Pact nerfing the mana cost for Dark Pact would impact combos so much that as increasing the cost of Dark Pact would would essentially destroy any counterplay that your opponent could take to counter to basically get rid of Dark Pact. And I think Blizzard looked at that and said, we really need to take this potential counterplay of Skulking Geist into account here. Is there a way that we can keep the cost at 1, but still affect the card so that it's not as impactful? And having the healing is huge. You may not think it is, but going from 8 health, restoring 8 health to 4 health is huge. That's a bit of health for 1 mana, but it's not a ton of health. That's still margin that you can easily make that up, and it really puts Druid in not Druid, but Warlock in a bind if they're being too greedy on their damaging effects. It means that they cannot sustain themselves as easily as before. So yeah, this is a huge nerf. This definitely impacts Dark Pact. You're still going to be able to pull off said combos as before, but you're not going to get healed as much, and that means a lot in the long term. That's going to allow a lot of decks the time and resources to basically take down Warlocks, and I think this is a huge change. I think this is a good change, and I'm actually really happy about this.
If anything, just look at this and go, like, all these combos that are a problem, like Dark Pact and Cube and Dark Pact and Rin, yeah, those are complicated and problematic. However, Skulking Geist being around to be able to just go and zap that and zap the Naturalize for, like, Taunt Druid and things like that, it's good to have that around. So, increasing this to 2 really wouldn't have done much. Except, like, those combos, yeah, now you gotta wait like an extra turn to be able to potentially pull them off to where you'd have a little bit of interactivity with it. But not taking that 8 health and ticking it down, I've seen plenty and many a game with this new combo of just being able to go, okay, I take this card on my board, I destroy it, and I gain 8 health, and then this thing vomits out of my hand, and I climb back into this game. So if anything, Dark Pact being nerfed to where it's down to 4 health, and with their Spellstone in play, being able to give them back 7 health when it's fully charged, this is a fine and fair nerf to keep things in line and sort of tick down the power where Cube and Control Walk is concerned. So, well played and well done. Especially coming into Possessed Lackey, because it went from a 5 to a 6. So cheating out those big old demons is going to be a little bit harder now, because yes, they still serve you now, but not as much potentially, because it's just, you've got Skull that comes out on 5. That can potentially drop your big Void Daddies out. So, sure, I could play Possessed Lackey on 6. It gives my opponent time to potentially silence it, but I could sit here and also hold it in my hand and then, Lackey Pact on 7. If I haven't drawn my Doomguard by then, or just Cube Pact on 6, because something spat out of my hand because my opponent didn't have the thing to ooze my deck, or ooze my Skull. So, again, it's another fair and even nerf. So,
Yeah, and all those examples you're giving out, the thing to take away is that those interactions are coming out and those combos are coming out later than they normally would, which gives decks time, and that's important. Giving decks even one or two more turns in order to deal with this threat is actually kind of huge. That gives them a lot of time to whittle you down. That gives them a lot of time to prepare, have the necessary cards that they need to counter, and that could go a long way to decreasing Q Block's stranglehold on the meta. Now it's not going to go away. I don't think that Q Block's going to go away by any means. Just like Jade's didn't go away last time. But it should lessen their stranglehold on the meta enough so that maybe new archetypes and new decks can kind of come out of how to play. That's the hope anyway. We'll see if it works. The next change was they increased the mana cost of Call to Arms from 4 mana to 5 mana. This means that Call to Arms is no longer going to be seen in even Paladin decks, where it was extremely broken given the combos with. I know Kibler talked about Loot Hoarder, but really for me the big problematic combo card there was Knife Juggler. That really can't happen in even Paladin anymore. It can happen in regular Paladin decks, like Murloc Paladin or any sort of aggressive deck. This can still happen, but it coming out a turn later could make a little bit of a difference. I don't think it's going to be that much of a stranglehold in regular Paladin decks that they won't still consider running Call of Arms. But I still think that the cost differential is good enough. The base is good enough and decent enough to actually give most decks the ability to counter whatever's coming out. Especially as Killer pointed out, you'd have basically your board clears are going to start coming out about turn 5 or so. That should handle whatever it is. Now, a lot of people are going, oh, now it just goes to Odd Paladin. It's going to be a problem, blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing, though. In Odd Paladin, it's only recruiting 1-cost minions. And Odd Paladin is not really focusing on 1-cost minions so much. That would make Call to Arms really super powerful. Number one, Call to Arms and Odd Paladin is probably not going to pull out much. And if so, they're going to be a lot weaker than they would be in other decks. And chances are, if they are putting Call to Arms in Odd Paladin, in order to increase the chance that they're going to be recruiting things from Odd Paladin, they have to put in a lot more 1-costs in Odd Paladin, which will dilute the deck. So Call to Arms in Odd Paladin is not as strong as it was in Even Paladin. Again, cards such as Knife Juggler are not going to be coming out. You're just looking at these 1-cost cards. Probably the most threatening thing really coming out from Call to Arms and Odd Paladin would be Righteous Protector. And if you're pretty much just banking on Righteous Protector and a few other 1-cost minions to come out to swarm the board, it's not as good a strategy as hero powering to fill my board with dudes and having ways and trying to find ways to just buff them up. It's just not as great a strategy. So Call to Arms is definitely a lot weaker. It's not going to be used in Even Paladin. It's a little bit weaker in other Paladin decks, and it's not going to be worth running in Odd Paladin decks. And if they're running in an Odd Paladin deck, then chances are you're not going to have to worry about that deck as much as you would have otherwise. I don't think Odd Paladin runs this at all. So yeah, I do think this is a worthwhile change. I think that it affects the decks that were problematic in running it. And for other aggressive Paladin decks, Call to Arms is still an option, but it allows other decks breathing room to take care of it and respond accordingly.
This card needed busted in the mouth hard. Like, any deck that you like, because as even Brian explained it, any deck that you built with Paladin, you looked at and you felt disappointed that you didn't include at least 2 copies of Call to Arms, because it was like, I can make use of this and just thin my deck out so much faster and get resources so much faster. And also refill my hand with little knick-knack and paddywhacks. Even Paladin was the big champion where Call to Arms was concerned. Also, Murloc Paladin being I would say more secondary target for it. Even though Murloc Paladin has the higher overall win rate. So, if anything, Call to Arms going from 4 to 5 huge. Honestly, huge, because it's just one tick of mana. If anything, it makes me just a little bit sad because I did like Even Paladin as a concept and as a deck. So it going from 4 to 5 instead of like 4 to 6 to potentially keep that deck around, I'm a little sad. However, as far as it goes, it's fine. Like, Odd Paladin in Wild, you may look at this and go, hey, I could potentially do this. I could throw in Zombie Chows and the card that Bob mentioned. And just go, here's are my good one costs, and just, throw in a little bit more of other little one cost doodads. And then just call it a day, and then play.
Are you creating a different odd cost paladin that focuses on having a bunch of one costs, and then Prince Liam?
That too. Prince Liam does come into mind and comes into play.
Go into Wild, have Prince Malkazar, Prince Liam, a bunch of one cost, Ravencaller. It's bad idea paladin. It's not going to work, guys. It's not going to work, but it'd be hilarious.
If anything, it probably won't work because, if anything, as far as Wild goes, this also slows down a lot of the high-end things in Wild as well, because it's such like, it makes Dude Paladin have to be the center focus again in Wild, so that's a really good thing.
Also, Eddie, you can always run Serenite Chain Gangs in your Even Paladin deck.
Yes, and that's how you make it top-heavy, if anything. But if anything, last but certainly not least, getting the double nerf bat is the Caverns Below. Originally, the card went from playing 4 minions to 5 minions, and then now it is, for the rest of the game, your minions are 4/4 instead of 5/5s. Alright, so first thing comes first, Anduin has an immediate issue that it would like to have a word with Rogue about. At least this particular one in particular. Because it can't do anything against 4/4s. However, everybody else gets to look at this card and go, okay, finally, can we play some mid-rangey control style decks now? Please? Just honestly, freaking please? Thank you. Thank you to the almighty freaking Team 5 freaking taking this card and kind of taking it out back and giving another buckshot to the freaking nuts. Those 5/5s were so oppressive. From just because, oh look, I'm just gonna sit over here and play with myself, and there's nothing I can do to stop you. Because Dirty Rat, gone. So you just sit over there, play solitaire. Oh look, my 5/5s are here now, and you're dead. And I just have a thing now, so it's got another buckshot in the nuts. I'm okay with this. Oh.
Yeah, nerfing the reward, okay. To be fair, I think the minions now being 4/4s feel a lot more fair. There's a huge difference between 5/5 minions and 4/4 minions. And 4/4 minions are a little more they can be overwhelming if Rogue has a board full of them, they can still be overwhelming, but they're a lot easier for decks to deal with than 5/5s are. Like, most decks can be able to try to contest against a board of 4/4s, and it's going to make a lot of Rogue strategies harder. Now, they can still do a lot of the things they were doing with Quest Rogue before. It's just, like I said, it's easier to deal with. So again, it's not as oppressive, and I think this is just a very decent change. This is right in line. It makes it keeps the deck. The deck is still strong. It's just not going to be as overwhelmingly strong, and that's very important, I think. The nerf to Crystal Core is actually, I think, very solid. If Quest Rogue continues to be a problem, I think that they should not be looking at the quest anymore. They need to be looking at cards that enhance the quest.
Like preparation.
Like preparation. But I think that we've kind of hit what Caverns Below should be fine at, which are you need to play 5 of the same type of minion, and for the rest of the game, your minions are 4/4s. I think that feels fair. Rogue might even consider, all right, let's increase the 4/4 ante by trying to put spiders in decks. Oh crap! Bad idea, brain. Get out. So overall, as far as these nerfs go, all of these feel very fair. There was not a single nerf in these announcements that I felt was, well, I don't agree with this. And normally, every single time that we go and do nerf discussions, there's normally that one Eddie that we disagree on or we felt was too strong. But this was just fair all around. I kind of agree with all of these. I think all of these are reasonable, and I think all of these are healthy for the game.
And I mean, there was, like, the last time they did nerfs, there was just the one, because it was patches, and I'm just like, you just had to change it now. Because it's just like, now?
Well, like I said, there's always that one. But,
I know.
Yeah.
But if anything, like, I look at all these, and I'm just like, hang on, you guys went properly fair and properly balanced in this whole run. Who up there is making these calls to make it to where these things are now actively more balanced and they're not war-songed? Like, that's a good thing. Because, like, some of the other changes that were on the table were, like, Sunkeeper Tarim, Blood Reaver Gul'dan, and Doomguard.
And let's be honest, if changes had come to those would be Warsong level changes.
If anything, yes. Because, like, Tarim really didn't need touched. Because Tarim was just more or less a symptom in the machine, in a sense. So, like...
Well, Tarim's a powerful card, but he should be a powerful card because he's a freaking legendary. I didn't think that there was any problem with what he did.
Yeah, it more or less just kept things controlled and in line. But like I said, he was a symptom because you had vomit from things like Caught Arms just vomiting on the board. So, yeah, 3/3s are going to be powerfully scary.
Sunkeeper Tarim was a symptom of Paladin being pushed, Paladin either being pushed or evolving in a more aggro direction. Instead of a control direction, which I think Paladin could do very well if need be. Sunkeeper Tarim in those circumstances was just a symptom of everything. It wasn't Tarim that was the problem. Tarim's easily dealt with. Tarim is not huge. But the problem was that Paladin was evolving and being pushed in a more aggressive direction, and Sunkeeper Tarim was not built with that in mind. Sunkeeper Tarim could be used in either way, and as we know, aggressive decks will find a way, and they'll grab any tools they can. It allowed aggressive decks to get rid of big things they didn't like, and allowed them to make their small things bigger. So Sunkeeper Tarim, it's a powerful card, but I never thought it was breaking or oppressive. And Doomguard, when we're talking about cards from the classic set, you need to be very careful because there's every chance that you could Warsong this. And all the discussion from Doomguard about Doomguard nerf and the community essentially would Warsong it or break it in the worst way possible. A lot of people were saying that it should not have charge automatically, it should have Battlecry, discard 2 random cards, and gain charge, not realizing that the whole point was that in order to play from your hand, there was a penalty. You want to try to cheat this out. That's the whole discussion from Doomguard has always been cheating it out. So trying to make charge always attached to the discard, I didn't think what made sense. It didn't make fair. I think it hurt the card. And a lot of people were going, well, we can change charge to rush. And I guess, that could hurt, but it also changed the identity of Doomguard and the connection that it had with Warlock's Ferris' identity. In general, I didn't find Doomguard to be a broken art problem at all. It was a symptom of what the real problems were. The real problems were cards like Doom Pact and Possessed Lackey. Those were the problematic cards in Warlock, not stuff like Blood Reaver Gul'dan or Doomguard.
Yeah, like, if anything, like, the cubes and everything else with alongside, like, Umbra and things like that were, and kind of can be problematic. However, Doomguard itself, because it's in the Evergreen section and set, you don't want to muck and mess with it, because at that point it becomes a thing of, well, now you're touching the classic set again, when if this is going to be an Evergreen thing, you're going to have to go in and then go, okay, well, we're touching it again, so bleh.
And they've also said that their feeling on the Evergreen, on the classic and basic cards, is they really don't want to nerf them unless absolutely necessary. They would much rather rotate them. And the thing with Doomguard was just the fact that, you know, in other metas, he's not as problematic. It's just that in this particular meta, he's problematic, so people were focusing on Doomguard, even though the problem was not with Doomguard, it was with, like, Possessed Lackey, Dark Pact, or Cube. All of those cards were the real problem, not Doomguard.
And everything, when it came right down to it, Doomguard's been a staple for Zulok for years now.
Yeah,
as a finisher, as well as Leroy.
Exactly. And when you're looking at it that it's been around for so long and has always been used this way, but has never been a problem, but it's a problem now, you should not be going, well, Doomguard's a problem. You should be saying, what's enabling Doomguard to be a problem? And again, it's Possessed Lackey, Dark Pact, Blood Reaver Gul'dan. Although in this case, Blood Reaver Gul'dan is only summoning a lot more Doomguards because of Cube, Possessed Lackey, Dark Pact, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, it's all this stuff kind of accumulating together to kind of make these cards that were also on the table that will rotate at the end of the year a problematic thing for standard set. So now that we have this whole state of the metagame basically shifting in a sense, hopefully after the playoffs happen, and if anything, to the people who I did get to see start screeching and reeing, wanting their nerfs now and wanting them, you know, why should we have to wait and make sure that this is intact and this is in play? It's like, okay, look, they at least stated that these changes were on the table and they were at least looking into it. That's the first thing you need to at least sit down and listen and think about. The second thing is that the competitive community has to have its integrity at least in place and not wham me, I want my nerfs now, people. Like, I can understand wanting your Naga Sea Witch months ago. I get it. However, wanting these nerfs spit and vomited out like yesterday's news or right now's news, you can't have that because it has to go through processing, setups, and things like that. It has to go through all these channels that some of you people aren't sitting down and going, well, it has to actually go through this. Some of us are actually mature enough to sit down and go, all right, well, I understand this has to work like this. The rest of you, I just shake my head at.
Yeah, and when they announced that they were considering changes. Just because they were considering changes and they said we're going to release anything at about this time, that does not mean they know what they're doing yet. And they have to, even if they did, they have to play test them, make sure there are no bugs, etc., etc., etc. Basically, there are a lot of reasons why they do what they do, and I kind of expected a release or a patch at a certain point after tournaments make complete sense to me. And the changes we got make complete sense to me. And it's worth waiting a few weeks so that something is done right instead of something being done immediately. And we need to stress that. We want things done right, not right away just to appease, just appease the little whiners or whatever. And I'm going to be very clear about Q Block. While I do think this is going to affect Q Block, while I think this is going to make Q Block more fair, this is not going to kill Q Block, nor would I expect it to kill Q Block. I expect Q Block to essentially be the Jades of this year. It's going to be around all year. Get used to it. Its power will be weakened. It will probably fade out where not as many people are playing it, but it's going to be a contender all year, and we need to realize that. Even if even all they can do is weaken it and keep it from being oppressive, it's still going to be a very powerful deck. It's still going to be around all year. Stop whining, stop crying, get over it, realize that, realize that the changes are going to be good overall for the health of the game, and that maybe will allow newer archetypes to come, maybe challenge Q-Block, and make the meta a lot more fun to play in.
I mean, if anything, the best part is that when you start to not only kind of wrap your mind around this ideal of, okay, this deck isn't going away at all anytime soon. It's just going to kind of get refined and refreshed. You get this sense of, all right, well, what's going to come in and potentially kind of shift and shape, or at least change things. And like one of the big things that came out, at least as far as the Americas tournament went this past weekend, was that Recruit Warrior was sitting at the top of the table as far as win rates went, with 75% win rate. So I think, if anything, when you start to sit down and you start to look at these different tournaments that go on, and you can start like banning out things and things like that, where it's maybe not ladder, you get to look at and see fresh ideas of things that you can go, maybe this will actively come into play now that these other cards have been hit and have been nerfed. So I'm hoping we get some fresh blood and fresh meat come June, because right now this really is Mean Streets 2.0. So if anything, another thing that I do want to mention is that a lot of the people who I know probably are doing a bit of the Banshee wailing and the Screeching are the people who are a lot more casual, and they play and they're like, oh great, I can see this deck, nah, compared to the people who are playing this hour upon hour upon hour, refining, practicing for these big tournaments that do produce money for them. Some people do make this their livelihood, their bread and butter and things like that. You do have streamers that do this. So you got to think about everyone involved and everyone that is going to be affected by these changes. So that's my final thoughts on that.
Decks never really die. They just fade in the background and are played with by the people who really loved them in the first place. And I never fault somebody. If you really loved a deck in the first place, I don't care if people said it was canceled. If you weren't playing it because everybody else was, but that you actually love the deck, you're the people I want to be playing with or against anyway. So, deck ideas never die. They just migrate to wild. Anyway. So, that's our thoughts on the nerfs. You guys can always tell us what you think. We should expect them within the next few weeks. And until then, we'll see you guys next time.